Welcome everyone. Look at this. Ended up picking up myself an Osmo Action 6 in Canada. This is the day after the initial worldwide release. In this video, I'm going to review some of the things that the early reviewers left out of their content, whether they were told to do so or they just forgot to include it. Some of those things involve the photo mode on this camera, and then also the 32x super slow motion feature that allows you to get up to 960 FPS super slow motion content. Let's get into that right now. All right, we're on the Action 6 now. This is actually day 2. I recorded an intro yesterday. I had so much more to say now after spending a whole day with this, so let's get into this camera and my overall opinions on it. First off, I want to say that this camera has received quite a bit of hate, and I think it is a little undeserved, the hate that it's received so far. First off, I want to say that I think DJI actually was pretty innovative with this release. People are claiming that there was really nothing added to the camera. Really, the major benefit to this camera is that it has that larger sensor. It's not going to benefit most of you unless you repurpose your clips or you want that open gate sort of look. Let's move over to that aspect ratio now. All right, now into this format. It is at f4, and I'm actually really liking being able to adjust the aperture on this camera. One thing not a lot of people mention is that when you turn off rock steady, it turns off the bars on the side, like you see here in the corners. This will be removed, and I'm going to turn off rock steady and give you an idea of what this aspect ratio looks like. Okay, now we're using the full width and height of the sensor without any sort of stabilization. That's one thing to keep in mind, that you do lose the stabilization. But for my overall use cases, I'm going to be mounting it on my hot shoe most of the time. I don't think it's that big of a deal because I'm only using brief clips. And I think if I really need to stabilize the footage, I can easily do so in DaVinci Resolve. I should mention as well, if you are filming a clip without any sort of stabilization, you can also use the gyro data, and you can probably achieve amazing results stabilizing the footage that way. If you want me to do some tests with the gyro data, please let me know. I'm willing to do so. Right now I have the camera in horizon steady mode. With this mode, I should be able to tilt it and still stay leveled with the camera. Camera perspective should not flip whatsoever. And I'm going to show you how well this works. I'm using this on my Nikon Z6 III. Just giving you the idea of perspectives using this horizon steady mode. Okay, now this is probably one of my favorite things about this new Action 6. I can easily mount it on top of my camera on the hot shoe, and when I tilt the camera to do vertical shots, it still stays level, which is honestly a total lifesaver for someone who does content reviews for cameras and lenses. This is ideal for me, and also for doing behind the scenes content. And with this minimum focus distance now, I can get really close, much closer than I ever could before. And that was one of the issues I had with my Osmo 360 camera that is no longer an issue with this. Before I forget to do this test, I'm going to show you how close you can get to your face when it is at f4 minimum aperture. Now, one thing that sort of angers me is that DJI's website is out of stock with the macro lens, and you have to pre-order it basically all throughout Canada currently. Now, I have the camera in my hand, but it seems for whatever reason, people didn't really get a lot of stock of the macro lens, and that was the lens that I think really elevates this camera over and above the other ones on the market. So I look forward to getting that. I have pre-ordered it, but the store that I purchased it from in Canada doesn't even know when it's going to arrive or when they're going to be receiving any stock. So that is pretty unfortunate. All right, I think next we should test the stabilization on the Action 6. I currently have the stabilization off. We're at f4. This is set at 4K 60. I'm just walking my normal pace, holding the camera close to my side, but I'm not trying to be all that careful right now. Let's switch over now to the Rock Steady mode, and then we're going to try out the Rock Steady Plus afterwards. Now that we're in Rock Steady, we're going to have the bars on the corner portions, and that is because it's having to crop in a bit in order to steady the shot. And I'm walking, trying to be somewhat careful that I'm not shaking the camera all that much. How does this look? Well, this is awkward. I tried to find the Rock Steady Plus and it's not available in the 1/1 inch sensor mode where you're able to shoot both the vertical and horizontal at the same time. So keep that in mind. You're only able to use regular Rock Steady in that mode. Now that we've moved over to a horizontal view at 4K 60, I'm going to test this camera out without any stabilization. Currently it is without, and we're gonna turn on the Rock Steady right now. Rock Steady mode is on. How does this look? I'm gonna try and do some running with this one. See exactly how decent this looks. From what I've heard, it's not a massive improvement over the 2 and this one. Let's switch over to the second one now. Okay, now I have my tripod pole extended. We have the Rock Steady Plus mode on. Hopefully this is nice and stable for you guys. I want to talk about the display LUTs that are in this camera. I'm not sure why they went with the ultra saturated look, because I feel when people are wanting to shoot D-Log-M, they want to see a very neutral base, and this display LUT is anything but neutral, unfortunately. So when you look at it, it just almost makes me a little sick to take in the overall colors of it. But it's D-Log-M. You do have quite a bit of pushing and pulling in your images, so that is one of the benefits of shooting in this. A lot of people are complaining about this camera and it having awful baked-in colors. Just shoot in D-Log-M. Learn how to properly color grade the camera. If you want me to show you how I did it and how I got more of like a neutral sort of look, let me know. I'd be willing to give some tutorials on how I did it in DaVinci Resolve. Currently, I have the camera shooting at the regular 1x mode. This is just a regular perspective on the standard de-warp camera setting. I'm gonna switch over to the 2x and let's see what sort of clarity and resolution we get with this view. And you also have to turn the camera off in order to switch this over. Now that I'm in the 2x crop mode, how is the clarity and resolution of this? Curious how it looks. Getting up close, I'm at f2.6 right now. Locked aperture. I'll flip it over here. What sort of clarity do we get now? I'm actually gonna lock this down and we're gonna compare between the 1x and the 2x, and I'm gonna share them side by side. I have the camera now at 100 ISO f4. This is in the 1x mode. Now let's move over to 2x in the 4K 30. Now that we're in the 2x zoom mode, how does this look in comparison? The settings are all completely the same between the two. I have the camera now at 100 ISO f4. This is in the 1x mode. Now let's move over to 2x in the 4K 30. We're still at f4, 4K 30, Rock Steady is on. We're using the full width and height of the sensor. And I want to talk about my experience with Supernight mode yesterday. I was actually a little surprised when I came home. I was expecting the footage to be in D-Log-M, and it turns out you cannot use the camera in D-Log-M when using Supernight mode. And now this is also the only mode where you're actually able to use the f2 aperture where you're using it as a fixed aperture. Let's see exactly what sort of depth of field we can get in this camera. I'll test out Supernight mode during the daytime, and then we're gonna try out some of the other fixed aperture settings, and we're gonna see what sort of depth of field we can get in this without the macro lens. I have no idea when I'll be receiving my macro lens, unfortunately, but I will be doing some reviews of that somewhat soon. We're in the variable aperture mode because that's the only setting you can use in Rock Steady, but it appears as if it's at f2. So we're gonna see if there's any sort of depth of field you get in this. This would be one of the shots if you wanted to create depth of field. And we're gonna go over now to a different setting. Now we're at locked aperture, f2.6. Is there any difference in depth of field? Now we're at f2.8 and it says it has a minimum focus distance of 30 centimeters. Now we're at f4. Should have a much better close minimum focus distance now. It says you can go as close as 20 centimeters. So it's already pretty good, even without the macro lens. Is there depth of field? I really doubt it. One thing no one has tested yet is the super slow action 30x mode within the Mimo app. So I have it at 4K 30 right now. I'm gonna switch over to 240p. We're gonna see what kind of slowdown footage we can get in this. After reviewing the footage from the 1080 with the 30x super slow mode, is it a gimmick or not? Let me know in the comments. Yesterday I was doing some comparisons of the photo taking capabilities with my Nikon Z6 III, and comparing the colors in raw form, they weren't even all that different in color. So I was really impressed with the colors when shooting raw on this Action 6. Obviously the sharpness was not nearly as good as my Z6 III along with the 14 to 24 2.8 G lens, but it actually looked pretty good side to side, especially if you're not cropping into the image any further. Let's try out now in photo mode the different wide angle options, starting out from the standard D-warp to the widest. Shooting this all at f4. Here's now an example of how this looks shot in black and white, and also the starburst effect that this camera offers. This is now the preset burst shutter mode that allows you to take a series of photos at once. For my last photo test, I want to test overall sharpness between different aperture settings, from the lowest to the highest aperture setting, to see if there is additional sharpness you receive because of this. Another feature that this camera now has is you can use your headphones. I'm currently using my AirPod Pro 2s. There's quite a bit of background noise, and I think despite me having to totally move now because of this, I think it's a good time to test all the mics and what sort of noise canceling you can receive without using the noise canceling on either, because I think DJI's noise canceling is crap and you shouldn't use it. Now let's switch over now to the mic in the camera. Now we switched over to the camera only for my microphone. I'm sure it's going to pick up a lot of this background noise, but this is a pretty good test, I think. Let's go over now to the DJI Mic 2. DJI Mic 2 is now in. The same annoying sounds are in the background. How does this sound in comparison? Maybe I will try the reduced background noise setting. I think it sounds awful though, but let's see. What does it sound like? Now with this noise cancellation setting on, how does this sound? If I were you, I would really recommend to deactivate the click to turn on the noise cancellation. I've had to reshoot so many segments because of this mode, and you can easily bump the microphone and activate it. So I think it's really best you just turn it off entirely. This low cut mode is turned on by default in the camera. I would often recommend for you to turn this setting off as well, because this can actually provide pretty unpleasant sound in a lot of your clips. But with there being background noise like there is now, this may be beneficial. This next mode, I haven't heard anyone actually even talk about, and this is the portrait mode. This locks you in at that 2x lossless crop. It gives you only the ability to use auto ISO. You can change the exposure, I believe, but you only have the options of 24 frames, 25, and 30 frames. And this also allows you to go up to that max of 4K. So how does this look? You also can actually adjust your aperture in this setting down to f2.6, but I'm at f4 right now because I don't have any ND filters for this camera at the current moment. This is now the subject tracking mode. How well does this track me? Another setting that I don't believe anyone actually tested in their videos. Could be wrong, but I don't believe anyone's tested it. And this goes to 2.7K max because it has to crop into the image. And I think this would be pretty good when shooting things like vertical video. It will save you from having to go into places like DaVinci Resolve and do it yourself there. Gonna go out of the frame. Now I'm gonna come into the frame, and how well does this track me in this mode? This is pretty good if you're filming yourself and you want a nice cropped image of yourself that has you basically encapsulated in the frame, tracking you at the same time. Let me know how this mode is and will you be using it? Another use case I could see a lot of people having for this is using it in their car for doing vlog sort of content like this. I have it mounted on my window right now. This is in 4K 30 and I'm using the horizon balancing mode. So everything should stay level quite nicely. I have the camera set to auto ISO with the max auto ISO setting being 1600 ISO. I was doing some testing last night and I wasn't liking the look of what the sensor was producing past this setting. Even 1600 is probably a little much for a sensor of this size. I am using it on its lowest aperture fixed setting of 2.6. Let me know, with the auto settings turned on, how well is it exposing me when I go in and out of shade while driving? It seems like it does a pretty good job exposing the face, even in the shade, but you are probably getting a pretty over-sharpened image based on them having to denoise the image quite a bit by raising the underexposed areas. So that's one thing to keep in mind. With it being day 2 of having this camera, my overall impression of it is pretty good, coming from an Action 3 and also Osmo 360, which I returned. The minimum close focusing distance on this, even without the macro, has been great and allows me to get that BTS from that POV camera perspective. I really like the horizon balancing now that's on this, which could easily have been a firmware update, I'm sure. Going into the downsides, last night I was actually thinking maybe I should put a light on my Action 6. And with it not coming with a cage, there's just no way of me mounting anything to this camera. I normally use action cameras without a case, so it's not that big of a deal for me right now. But if I were wanting to use this camera and it be my main camera and I was wanting to document trips and travel, having a cage for mounting things like microphones and lights on the side would have been great. It really should have included a cage with even the standard base set. If you have anything you want me to test with this camera, please let me know. I'm open to testing out whatever you'd like. And this was a non-sponsored brief overview of the camera. So any support buying through my links, if you want to buy it, would be greatly appreciated. You can buy it right now in Canada on Amazon.ca, although you're gonna have to wait a bit for the macro lens, which I will link as well in the description. Also have links for B&H Photo and Amazon in the US, and hopefully you guys in the US can get your hands on this camera somewhat soon. Despite me recommending this to most people, if you own the Action 5, I would say you probably don't need to upgrade. The image quality is very similar except for nighttime. This is a little better at nighttime, but it also is doing some really weird things that I'm not really a big fan of compared to when shooting with DSLR mirrorless sort of camera. If you have any recommendations what I should do next, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys on the next one. Bye. I'm not gonna walk down here. I'm gonna fall on my ass.